Hello and welcome to the second video in the Polyfoni tutorial series. My name is still David and I am the creator of Polyfoni. If you haven't watched the first video in this series, I highly recommend you do so, because in this episode we are going to talk about the decoration group. As always, anything covered in this series will also be covered in the user manual, so if you want to know more about anything I talk about more in depth, you can go to polyfoni-app.com/user manual and read more there. Let's start from where we left last time, which is we created this simple little melody. We can just have a quick listen to it. So we haven't done anything with the decoration group, and that is exactly what we're going to talk about. Because in music, often we have chord tones on the important beats of the music, and that is what the framework group is doing here, where it only generates pitches in these chords we have specified here, the A minor triad and the D minor triad chord. Really it is scale, but you know, I'm using those words interchangeably regarding polyphony. But what we can do with the decoration group is we can add notes which are generated relative to the framework note that comes before the decoration and the framework notes which comes after. So for example, when I hover above this note, you can see it's a framework note, and the next one is also a framework note, because all these notes are framework notes. And between each of these framework notes, there is a possibility of generating a decoration. And a decoration is a pattern, but it's not necessarily a single note. It can actually be multiple notes. So some examples of the decorations available in Polyfoni. For that, we can look at the user manual. There are some built-in decorations. So for example, there's passing tones. There's upper neighbor tone, lower neighbor tone, appogiatura, escape tone, suspension, and anticipation. And those are the ones that are built in currently. There might be added more in the future, but really Polyfoni allows us to quite easily generate these in our melody. So let's have a quick example of how we can do this. So to begin with, I will set the duration to 1 just to make it easier to see what is happening. So it's the same melody we had before, it's just every note is now 1. But an important thing to know about the duration group is we don't need to specify items in all of the tracks like we do with the framework group for something to happen. So for example, if I just make an item here in the pitches, that is actually the only one that is required for a decoration to be made. So for example, if I enter passing tone here, which is one of the built-ins in the user manual, you can see we get passing tones between each framework note. Yeah, let's just try to have a quick listen. So that's kind of funky, because currently all the decorations are generated in the 12th tone scale. So if we want to generate in a specific scale, we can create a harmony item in the decoration group, and we can then select which scale we want the decorations to be generated within. So for example, we can select the A minor scale, and this is not the A minor triad, but the actual A minor scale. So now we can see there's become fewer passing tones because it's a smaller scale. But let's try to listen to this. Okay, what you might notice is that it only generates passing tones between notes where it's actually possible. So for example, these two framework notes, they are the same pitch, so therefore we cannot generate a passing tone. There will be no decoration generated there. So let's try one of the other built-ins. Let's try the Appogiatura. And yeah, it just generates a lot of appogiaturas. So So that's kind of interesting, but let's say that we want to change between appogiaturas and passing tones. Well, one way we could do it is like go here and then create another item here and say passing tone, and another one here and say appogiatura, etc., etc. That is again not exactly how polyphony is meant to be used. What we can do instead is we can go into the pitches item and we can use x here like we do in all the other expressions so far. So we can say appogiatura if x modulo 2 is 0, else passing tone. So we can actually conditionally, based on x or based on some other things I will tell you about shortly, we can actually conditionally select what kind of decoration we want. So let's have a listen again. So now we're switching conditionally between appogiaturas and passing tones. We can also use list indexing like we did for the duration in the last video. So now we are using list indexing to repeatedly switch between appogiatura, passing tone, upper neighbor tone, and then repeat that pattern. So let's try again. So that is how we can switch between what kind of decoration we want. Now, another thing we might want to do is change how long the decoration is compared to the previous framework node. Because as you might see, if I remove this, if I delete it with Control X, this is a framework node, as you're well aware. But if I add the decoration, you can see the framework node actually gets shorter because 50% of it gets replaced by the decoration. That is how it is, no matter how many nodes are in the decoration. The framework node and the decoration will share the framework node's original duration 50-50. Now let's say we want to change that. Then we have this fraction track, and this is where we do it. So let me visually explain how fraction works. So by default, fraction is 0. Now we can change this, of course, just by inserting an item onto the fraction track. Of course, this item can contain x as well. It can make use of x, so we can actually change fraction based on the node index. Sorry, the decoration index. In this case, x is the index of the decoration. But let's say we set fraction to 1 in an item. Let's try to do it within Polyfoni. So now fraction is 1. What you actually see is the decoration got longer. But how much longer did it exactly get? Well, let's talk a bit about that. So when fraction is 0, the duration is split 50% between the decoration and the previous framework node, the framework node that comes before the decoration. So that is when fraction is 0. When fraction is 1, let's say 0 here, 0, when fraction is 1, the duration is split 1/3. So that means the decoration receives actually 2/3 and the original framework node receives 1/3 of the original duration. When fraction is 2, this becomes 1/4. So the original framework node receives 1/4 of the original duration. When fraction is 3, this becomes 1/5 and so on. So the higher the fraction is, the smaller the original framework node becomes. So for example, if I set this to 5, you can see, and here, let's try to listen. the original framework notes become much smaller. Now the opposite happen if we do negative. So if we do negative fractions, this will be assigned to the decoration itself. So actually the decoration will become 1/3, 1/4, 1/5. So the lower the fraction is going into the negative, the smaller the decoration will become. So for example, if we do -5, or let's do -3 maybe, you can see the decoration notes become much smaller. So now they actually take up 1/5 of the original duration. And there's no limit to how small you can go with the fraction, or how big you can go, unless one of the notes becomes smaller than like a set minimum, because at that point the notes are no longer visible within Polyfoni. So yeah, but let's listen to this version. So every decoration is 1/5. Now we can of course do this conditionally as well with x. So for every 4th decoration, the fraction will be much smaller. So that's how we use fraction. I hope it makes sense how that works in terms of percentages, what percentages gets assigned to the framework and the decoration. So the other thing there is a skip. This is actually pretty simple. This just means if some condition is true, for example x modulo 2 equals 0, the decoration will actually be skipped. So every other decoration here is actually getting skipped, and that's very simple. There's not too much to this. What we can do if we don't want to use skip, another thing we can actually do to skip decorations is we can just return none here, for example. So instead of doing the upper neighbor tone, we actually just return none every 3rd decoration, and this is the same as skipping it. Of course we can just change between stuff like expressions. We can change whenever we want for the fractions and so on. But another thing I want to show you is a certain thing I found to be kind of useful, is when you want each passing tone within the decoration to be equally as long as the framework note that comes before. This is a little trick that I figured out how to set the fraction so that is the case. So for example here you can see the framework and the passing tones are not the same length. But what if we want them to be, the framework and the passing tones to be the same length? Well, we can actually input this formula, ceil absolute, and then there are some special variables like x, and that is the previous degree, negative next degree, and then -2. And this actually makes every passing tone the same length, as you can see in all the cases. The framework note and the passing notes are actually the same length. And this is kind of useful. It's a useful little trick, in case that is what you're trying to go for. So really that is how decoration work. Another thing about decorations is they don't, you can see the harmonic sum track here, which shows the resulting harmony of the melody. The decorations are not part of the harmonic sum, and when you highlight some notes, you can actually see like a harmony, the calculated harmony up here. Decorations aren't part of that either. So it's only the framework notes that count here and in the harmonic sum track here. There is the possibility of actually just using previous degree and next degree to create your own decorations. But I think the built-in decorations that you again can find in the user manual here are pretty sufficient for most stuff you want to do with decorations, and it can actually create a lot of interesting stuff. Thank you for watching. I think We might do scales in the next video, and I also have planned to do some advanced tips, like how to undo, redo stuff, and other editing tips like that, and how to add voices and how to change instruments. So that will be in one of the future tutorials. If there's anything that you are in doubt about how you do in Polyfoni, please let me know in the comments of this video. Thank you for watching, and yeah, bye.